I'm Michael Anderson Henderson Dorland, and I'm representative of the Cult of Brighter Days. Thank you for joining us for our Saturday show, The Good Word. I'm actually out here because the last couple of weeks we've actually started off with one of the videos that we have during the week. We have small videos during the week every day um, that are good news. We call them the good news because we all know everything's good news, even when it's not. So I wanted to make sure that people realize that there's somebody live talking here before we go into the video, and then we'll go into the video and everybody can discuss it. But, it's one of those things where you're trying to hit a metric because we only have so many limited number of subscribers. Keyword, uh, feel free to click on like and subscribe if you want to. No pressure or anything like that, but that algorithm, it needs fed some way. So yeah, so we're gonna go in. We're gonna watch a short video that we had during the week about what we're gonna talk about, which is yes, this week again, it's politics because everybody else wants to talk about politics. I want to talk about something else, but no, it's politics, and I have to do what the council says. So they're shaking their head at me because they think that I'm totally off base on this. But we'll get to them in just a minute. So here, find out what we're talking about and learn here. Actually, it doesn't tell you, but it at least gives you an idea.
Welcome to the newest reality TV game show, where we put the people with the least qualifications in control of your future. Welcome to Big Brother Kakistocracy Edition, where the stakes are real, the resumes are a joke, and the Constitution is just another obstacle. Let's meet just a few of the players. Up first, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Pete is a Fox News echo chamber escapee. He thinks counterinsurgency strategy involves yelling freedom in all caps. Next, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services. We all know RFK, the anti-vax evangelist now in charge of public health. His solution for disease? Less science, more shouting. Then we have Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education. Linda is a wrestling executive turned school czar, bringing Monday Night Raw energy to your Monday morning math class. Up next, Mike Huckabee, U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Huckabee is a Fox News commentator and Southern Baptist pastor who manages diplomacy through dad jokes. He has his Bible in one hand and Israeli peace talks in the other. And next, Scott Turner, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Who better to fix housing inequality than a former NFL player with zero policy experience? Answer: literally anyone. Scott's qualifications? Let's just call them inspirational. Next is Chris Wright, Secretary of Energy. Wright has loads of experience in the field as an oil executive. Because energy and the environment are two different departments? Wait, does the EPA even exist anymore? These aren't hypotheticals. These are real people with real titles, real authority, and the terrifying ability to sign off on things that affect your actual life. They're not interns. They're not background characters. They are fully credentialed disasters with office space, security clearance, and access to the big red buttons. And they've been handed the steering wheel of the national bus while arguing over whether maps are too woke. And people, this is only the very tip of the iceberg. We're unpacking this kakistocracy, where it's heading, and what to do about it. Live on the Cult of Brighter Days, Good Word. This Saturday, and every Saturday, at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube. Get the full article at www.thecultofbrighterdays.org and come scream into the void with context. Because if we're trapped in this reality show, we might as well get the last word in before the credits roll. While you're here.
Okay, yeah. So, boy, that video you had just was off a little bit at the end with the subtitling. That very end we saw was weird. It didn't. Anyway,
Okay.
Hi. This is everybody here. We're talking. We got Dr. Jess up in the upper left. We got Bishop Sara down in the lower right. We got Step Pope Richard down in the lower left. I'm not sure if that shows on your screen that way, but that's what everybody's seeing. And we got me. And I'm here to start the conversation off again, I guess. But I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Jess, who did that great video and brought up the topic. Because, well, you're the one who brought up this as the topic today. So
I did. Well, I brought up the topic because I was watching a video of a speech that Obama had given at, oh man, now I have to look and see where it was, at Hamilton College in April. And it was all, you know, rainbows and unicorns, which I am all about, and all the positives and all the good and all about how we can talk things through and it's all going to be great. And I thought that doesn't really sit well with me. And then we were watching another video a couple nights ago where somebody mentioned the word Kakistocracy, which is really hard to pronounce. But it describes a government that's governed by the worst of us. And that is what we have. And if we're governed by the worst of us, how can we go into it with rainbows and unicorns and talking about how we're all going to get along when their point is to burn things down?
Well, maybe describe what you mean by when you say the worst of us, because there's a lot of ways that can be interpreted. Richard is definitely the worst of us when it comes to, like, you know, reading. Well, no, you're the worst of us when it comes to reading gaming books, because you just don't want to. Richard's not the worst of us at reading gaming books, but you get my point, though, right? It's like, you know, what does the worst of us mean?
Well, the person who's put up for Surgeon General, Dr. Casey Means, is a wellness influencer who most of us don't even like. Like, she makes very little sense. She's all about gut health and very little actual science. In her hearings or whatever, when she was talking about her possible appointment, she's, you know, saying she didn't learn this stuff at Stanford. Of course she didn't, because that's not what's taught at a college where, you know, you're trying to learn medicine. So when that's going to be our Surgeon General, you have to question, you know,
well, I think,
what's the point?
Well, and let's use people as reference for this and everything. So I've got some video clips I've queued up, and in sticking with our policy here as a cult that's not a cult, we're going to live by what we say, and we're going to fail completely, because you guys can't watch the videos. You can only hear me describe what the videos say because of the delay.
Us on here.
Yeah, you on there. I can watch it, but I'll describe it to you guys. But I'm sure all of you have seen these clips before, but I want to provide the people an idea of what we're talking about and real world, real-time examples that we're experiencing. So let me go ahead and,
you know, start doing Meet the Press and going to the Council on Foreign Relations and spending time with all the new cocktail sipping crowd. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because President Trump asked me to bring warfighting back to the Pentagon every single day. Right. That is our focus, and get along to goal.
This is a list. Okay, so that was Pete Hegseth talking about why he was brought into the military to not get along and go along and hang out with the cocktail crowds, but to bring combat readiness, combat effectiveness, actual military awareness to the military services, because it had gone woke. I'm actually expanding out from what he said because it was really brief, but I think everybody here has listened to enough of him to get the basic I mean, Richard looks like he's about ready to cry there. So
So having actually worn the uniform, and Pete Hegseth, who has not actually worn the uniform, I just despair at the possibility of him having anything to say about what military readiness means. Has he ever had to be ready? No.
Well,
which I think is really good when the clip comes out and we can talk about that. So
what do you mean?
Have Richard say what he just said. Like,
oh, well, no, the clip already played. I already, you know, so everybody, that's why I was quiet. I wasn't just sitting here to look pretty.
I thought you were trying to get the clip to play.
No,
See,
no, I got the, I have the clip. Look, okay, if I shared the screen with you, if I shared this, Yeah, and it's all streamed. So next we're going to talk about so I'll tell you beforehand, okay? RFK, we're going to talk about RFK, who's talking about all the different ingredients that are in things that are bad for us and everything. And I'm pretty sure you guys saw a clip about this because he's said the same thing several times. So let's watch the clip so we have an idea of what we're talking about.
Of ingredients from foods, carrageenan,
Carrageenan is a thickener extracted from seaweed.
riboflavin,
Riboflavin is vitamin B2.
monosodium glutamate,
Monosodium glutamate is an amino acid that used to have a bad reputation, but then it has been re-evaluated in recent years and has shown to not be harmful.
and 20 others that I can't pronounce.
Well,
If
he
you
says
can't
he
pronounce these
a bunch of
things
stuff.
and you don't know what they are or what they do, then you have no business
can't pronounce a bunch of the
dictating
stuff that's
whether they're
in
harmful or
stuff
whether
too,
they should be
but,
in the foods
well,
we
I know-
consume. Just saying.
I trust the
really
people
hope
that
that-
can.
So
I really hope that the people out there, out in the audience, can actually hear this. So
Yes,
if they can hear the
they
clips,
can.
would you please
They
say
can.
something in the chat
they
that you can hear
well,
it?
it's going to be that
We
same.
can't hear
It's
it.
going to have that same time delay that's preventing anyway.
Yeah, I know, but at least I'd know then.
Look,
Yeah.
okay, we've firmly established the failure by design, as in my design failed. So we can go ahead and move on past that.
Okay,
and
but that clip, because I found it, was him reading off a cereal box, right? Of all
Yeah.
the stuff in the cereal.
Like
So it must be
riboflavin.
bad because he couldn't pronounce riboflavin,
Uh,
which is a
vitamin B.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the very end, it comes down to a bunch of stuff I can't read, and the end YouTuber, because there's a YouTuber commenting about what each of the ingredients are, says if you can't pronounce this stuff, maybe you shouldn't be in that position of that. So I'm going to show a couple more people.
do we want to talk about each person, or do you want to go back and talk about?
I think we should. I think we should talk about. We should look at each person and talk about a little bit, because I do have another video that we put together at the end about meditation and how to deal with this type of stuff, because this stuff is going to drive. I mean, look at Richard's face and look at Sarah's face and the despair and the overwhelming dread that crosses it every time we even talk about their names. They don't even have to watch these clips, and they just know when I say what these clips are about.
This is
So we're going to,
So let's more clips and then talk.
yeah, we're going to talk about the education, Secretary of Education here, and her take on steak sauce.
I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this
The
morning. I
eye
wish I
roll
could remember the
right there.
source. But that
That's
there
like-
is a school system.
There's a
that's
difference
gonna
between
start,
A1 and AI.
making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades.
That
And
was
that's just
perfectly timed
that's a
for not
wonderful
watching the
thing.
video.
Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have
It was-
internet in our schools. Whoop.
it was like you
Now,
actually
okay, let's
heard her say
see
it
A1 and how
when you said
and
that,
how can
Richard.
that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in
People are running our
absorbing,
country.
more information for those fast
This is
learners?
why the
It can be
worst of
more
us are in
one-on-one
control. I mean,
directed, and
Department of
those are the
Education
kinds
is
of
run by
things and
somebody who doesn't
innovations
know
that I
what
want
AI
to see
is.
continue to develop.
Well, and yeah.
And Kristi Noem
Oh, she's
trying to explain habeas corpus.
hold on. She's next. Let's show the clip of
She's
Kristi
next.
Noem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you invited
Oh no,
me.
wait. I'm sorry. Huckabee's
No.
next. Huckabee's next.
Because
Because
I'm
of
going
the
to say it,
comments.
but I will continue to say it. And by the way, it's nothing that I haven't said for the past 42 years.
At least this
having
guy
been
sticks
in and
by
out
his
of Israel
guns when he
and
says
having
what
been
he
a
will
strong
say.
believer that the reason that the Holocaust
As horrible
happened
as it is, he
because
still
so many
sticks
people
by it at least. I
naively
mean,
believed
that's a
William
plus.
Chamberlain's ridiculous statement that we're going to bring peace in our time, and we ended up seeing 11 million people murdered, 6 of whhom were Jews who were marched to those very ovens that I've stood in front of.
In about a week, there's
One
going
of
to
the
be
best
first
things
debate on
about
the
that,
Republican
his comment there was he said Neville Chamberlain's comments were what led to the war, about peace in our time, because that's what he said when he gave over Rhineland to Germany and everything. And who else says peace in our time and things like that? I do have a Kristi Noem clip here. It's a little long, but you can start your eye rolls right now, regardless of whether you can see it or not. because she's talking. This clip is where she's talking about why she left the Democratic Party. Okay.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism.
Just imagine what she's saying, because you can't see it. I'm sure you can add comments.
In our Constitution,
Well,
who are
I know
hostile
why she left the
to people of
Democratic Party.
faith and spirituality.
She's from South
Who
Dakota.
demonize
She
the police
had
but protect
a desire
criminals
to
at the
actually win
expense
an
of
election once in
law-abiding
a while.
Americans. Who believe in open
When
borders.
did she leave
who
the I didn't even know she
weaponize
was
the
a
national
Democrat.
security state to
I
go
didn't
after
either.
their political
I didn't
opponents.
think that was Kristi. No,
and
I
above
thought that
all,
was,
who are
the
dragging
other
us
Oh, maybe
ever
this is
closer
Tulsi
to
Gabbard.
nuclear
Tulsi
war.
Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. I thought that was Tulsi Gabbard, not Kristi.
Yeah, you're
No.
right. It's Tulsi Gabbard. I mean,
I
Republican.
mean, she's also an idiot, but
She left it.
Yeah.
Well, and you didn't see
actually,
that?
technically, to find the clip, I typed in these people's names and then the word idiot, and that's how I found your clips for you.
And all the clips are listed in the description of our show, and all of the clips go to commentary about the clips, because I can't stand watching these actual clips of these people talking without, wanting to bang my head into a bloody pulp on the desk. But I can watch them if somebody else is making comment and everything. The next clip is really just Elon Musk sobbing and crying in front of the Senate hearing. If you guys saw that, where he was talking about the stock prices, we can actually talk over it because it's just him crying.
It's just him crying.
Yeah, it's. I would almost say that it's AI generated, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
I saw the satellites going across the sky last night. That was cool.
Which satellites were those?
The Starlink ones. It was just this big chain of satellites for like a minute and a half.
Okay, we have a little bit on our new Surgeon General nominee, real quick, where she's talking about making sure that you have all the colors in your diet.
Oh, Casey
because
Mays.
you need all the colors in your diet. You need a well-ranging set of colors in your diet.
One of the most visible
Wait a
public
minute, is
health
she talking about a
policy
rainbow of
has
food?
spurred a vigorous debate.
You want to get the most diversity of color
The most diversity
in your
of color.
diet.
She doesn't have a kind of scalable leadership experience in public health, and that is such a big part of the job.
Will Stone covers healthcare policy for
Rainbows are
National
gay
Public
and therefore
Radio.
evil. So
If you speak to
if she's,
former Surgeon Generals, they will say
I just gotta know.
they don't think she's qualified because she does not have the
Well,
kind
they're
of
not consistent in their
robust
message, so.
clinical experience that you would typically
and
expect in the nation's
And
top
she is a
doctor,
doctor.
basically.
She is a
Along
doctor,
with her brother,
but
Kelly,
she
who is a
dropped
top
out of her
advisor to
residency.
Kennedy at HHS, Means
So,
wrote a best-selling book last year
she
called Good
got
Energy,
fame by
which argues
writing
that, quote, metabolic
she's
dysfunction due to poor
metabolic
diets and sedentary
dysfunction,
lifestyles is the root cause of
the root
chronic
cause
diseases.
of all chronic diseases in our country
She's
is
endorsed the
sedentary
health benefits of
lifestyle
raw milk
and
says birth
things
control
like
pills are
too many birth
overprescribed
control
and
pills
signal a disrespect of
and
life.
which are
Means
disrespect of life. And God, I can't believe that they said disrespect of life is birth control pills. And whole milk, raw milk. She's a big fan of raw milk. And if we just had things like drinking raw milk and none of these medications and people just got off their butts and walked, all these chronic illnesses would disappear. So
Mine haven't.
Well, that's because you're not
Are you
drinking raw milk. If you haven't drank raw milk, you can't say that it's not going to cure you.
It has been about 50 years since I drank raw milk. I had a friend who lived on a dairy farm and we had stayed overnight for his birthday party one year. Had some raw milk.
Yeah, raw milk is, So next up is Stephen Miller. We all know who Stephen Miller is. I'm just throwing this stuff up here so people can see that we're not just making up things these people are saying and how they're acting. So Stephen Miller is going to talk about how children are going to be taught how to love America.
To love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values. for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology. For any nation to be successful, it cannot teach its children to hate themselves and to hate their country. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous communist woke culture.
A Jewish man? So yeah, that's just, I don't know. You can say a lot of things about Stephen Miller. Initially, I had like a 5-minute clip to cover all the things you could say about Stephen Miller. Like his comment, his speech in college about people complaining about students just throwing trash around when he said that there's plenty of janitors were paying to pick that up for them.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, that was a brilliant speech.
Showed, isn't that a lot about, like, basically, if you're not teaching children to love America, your school's not gonna be funded.
Well, they're taking the Department of Education away so that they can control the money they give to the states for education to prevent them from spewing this woke communist ideology of understanding the history of your country. Which
and being a
really
communist is the worst thing you could possibly be.
Regardless of that, the idea, okay.
Be a gay socialist communist, and then you're going to hell.
Let's talk about our philosophy and our policies and the whole point of absurdism when we're talking about the absurdity, y'all. Failure, like we say, is not an option because it's mandatory. We fail. Everybody fails. All people fail. That's the one thing we have in common with the ultra rich and the poorest of the poor. Everybody fails. And the trick about it is, and what we like to promote is, yeah, you're going to screw up. So own it and get better at it. And next time you fail spectacularly because you're going to do it.
He's doing that.
Well, but he's not learning from it. And that's the problem with teaching these things about history in this country. If we want to not go back and repeat the same thing again, we have to learn from the failure. But the problem is these people don't think it's a failure. That's the other thing. They think that the failure was giving other people the same rights that they had.
As it happens, I did grow up in a country where we taught kids to love their country. And we also taught them history. And
Canada?
I
didn't know you were Canadian. You're Canadian? I'm shocked.
I am not Canadian. And Kristi, known aside, I used to think that the South Dakota educational system, at least the one in Spearfish, was pretty good. I definitely learned that fascism was bad. It's something that you fight against. That democracy was good. It was something that you tried to implement here and abroad. We grew up in a world where the United States was going to be going out to the rest of the world and giving them the tools to build their own democracy. I don't know where that world went. I am more and more convinced that I slipped into a parallel world sometime about 1996.
We're not going to start discussing the Mandela effect, okay? That just is not. We have a whole show. Yeah, you can do that next week because Fruit Loops was spelt that way. I don't care what they say, and
Domino's did have a cheese crust pizza.
I'm not so worried about that. But the thing that gets me was I know that Bananarama did a version of Iko Iko in the 80s, around 87, and you cannot find that anywhere. And I can't find the MP3 I had of it. I found one page that actually mentioned about Bananarama having a version. Anyway, back to the thing. Anyway. Look at that.
Do we have more clips?
Robert.
Do we have more clips we have to watch?
Yes, we have a couple more clips to watch through. The next one is our... I don't know, the guy in charge of the environment who's screwing it all up.
Enormous factors for making the world a better place, including the environment a better place.
No, it's not. What are you talking about, man? I like hearing this.
This paint is hydrocarbons.
Dude, we live within the society that we were born into. Do you blame everybody in here for getting microplastics in their system? Are you aware of the tipping points we're about to cross?
What are
He
the
says
tipping
there's
points?
no
The tipping points.
points.
Amazon rainforest
So-
dieback, permafrost melt, the West Antarctic ice sheet. We've already crossed that tipping
now
point.
they
That means
can
30
tax
feet of sea level rise locked
No,
in.
not that
We
type
have
of
multiple
tipping.
tipping points.
But technically, I think you're right.
You just don't care about future.
I live in Wisconsin. We took over cows.
Do you know the rate of sea
It's
level
going to
rise
keep going
today?
up, bro.
Today it's one.
The future generations will pay for your
3
sins.
inches a decade.
And it's going to get higher and higher.
I do like
Future
his comment
generations will
about future
hate us
generations
because
are
of people
going
like
to
you.
hate
Because you just keep coming up with all these
us,
lies.
like millennials,
It is.
because of the things the baby boomers are doing.
No, you can't, man. No, you can't. Poor countries can't. Poor countries can't. Indonesia's going to be flooded. They can't afford those walls.
Yeah, the
That's
protesters said
millions of
that.
people. That's
You
billions of
think any
climate
of these
refugees
people,
by the end of the
you know,
century.
one thing we pointed out was that how many Gen Xers are in Congress versus how many baby boomers are still in Congress.
No, it hasn't. I don't know where
You
you're
know?
getting this
Well,
information,
how many
man.
Gen
These are
Xers,
actual
like,
facts. It's in that
Gen X
report. I
so
wrote
how
that
many of
book
us
right there
would
that
even
just your
want
colleague got.
to be a part
Just
of
look
it?
at the numbers. Look at the climate change section.
So
I've heard that
Douglas
number
Adams
before,
had
$2
this
million.
bit in one of his Hitchhiker's Guide books where he posited that the person who was most qualified to be in public office was someone who absolutely did not want to be in public office.
Well, I mean, but I think that's a cause. I think that's a cause because of the way we handle public office. Because, I mean, you know, if you're in a government that's actually doing things for the population and actually helping the population not want to lynch them, or helping at least half of the population not want to lynch them, you might want to work in that type of area. But we're running the country like a business. And when you have a business, that means that all the profits go up to the CEOs and the workers get paid as little as possible. So I guess that is one promise that Trump did provide from his first term that has carried across. But the problem is he's riding on Reagan's coattails. Let's just be honest about that. That we've been running the country like a business since then, because
So that is a lot of the rhetoric that they use, but I know accounting. I've run a business. You don't run a business on a deficit. And when you do finally get to a point where you are making progress and profit, you don't then immediately try to reduce your revenue
I
to pay
disagree
off
with
your
you.
debt.
I'm sorry, I disagree with you.
Totally
I think
disagree.
that if you don't, and I don't, and anybody who like is starting a business from scratch, we don't. But billionaires, they do that all the time. That's
well,
how
see,
they run.
see, that's the thing. It's what do they call that? What do they call that? These companies that come in to save dying businesses. Talk, because I'm looking it up right now.
Okay. But yeah, like, and the fact that our country's deficit is beyond any of our comprehension. Like trillions. I can't imagine trillions.
Private equity. Private equity. That's it. Private equity is exactly the opposite of what you're talking about, Richard, because private equity firms come in, they purchase a company, and then they take out a massive amount of loans on that company that they can then utilize to take the time and piecemeal and break the company apart and sell it piecemeal and make a lot of money. And they also use that money. They also use that money to give themselves golden parachutes for when they leave the company or they get kicked out of the company because they're managing it wrong. So all the debt falls on the company, but the private equity firm takes all this money off the top of it because they're hired to save the company. This is standard practice nowadays for like Bed Bath and Beyond. Most all those Toys R Us died because of this exact thing. So they are running it like a business, but it's not a business that's to save the business. It's a business to make sure those CEOs get those golden parachutes and all the profits go up to them. So technically, like I said, I'm going to back the Republicans in this one. They run the country like a business. It just really sucks because none of 90% of the stockholders in the business, i.e. the American citizens, are down working at the minimum wage level for that business.
Well, and the joke that I made in the video was that Chris Wright, he's like the Secretary of Energy. Why does he care about the the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency? Why does he care? Who cares if everything burns up?
He's
just worried about energy.
He's getting money. He's getting kickbacks from all the oil companies for all the presentations. He sold his book and everything like that. So, I mean, but that's what he does when you're at that level. Because, you know, if the company fails, what's going to happen to him? If we all die of poisoned drinking water, he's going to have, you know, bottled water. So he's going to be fine.
Anyways, he won't care. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they're all spending billions of dollars making these bunkers. If you go out there and look at how much money is being spent by these CEOs and everything. We have one more to look at before we're going to show the other video that's going to talk about how to deal with this.
Is that Scott Turner?
No, it's Judge Janine, because yeah, and if you can stomach it, if people can stomach this,
can't stomach watching Judge.
That he's spending to not have to show the birth certificate. There is a cleansing needed in our FBI and Department of Justice, who should not just be fired, but who need to be taken out in handcuffs, like a crime family in the movies, except this time the FBI is the crime family. Was there hypnosis? Are they using confabulation? And I don't want to get into the weeds here, but you know what? This is the kind of thing where they have a right to true cross-examination.
We're talking about Kavanaugh
Omar wears a
and
hijab,
his
which
people
according to
against
the
him and
Quran,
hypnosis.
33:59, tells women to cover so they won't get molested.
And the hijab.
Is her adherence to this Islamic doctrine indicative of her adherence to Sharia law?
Okay, I
which
can't
in
put up
itself
with her
is
anymore. I can only listen to... And the next one was Ravik Ramaswamy, but we don't have to worry about him because he managed to get himself removed from having anything to do with this, like, fairly quickly when he got into a tussle with Elon. So yeah, so we're gonna watch a video
but he was also named as being the co-department head with Elon, so that just shows who Trump is picking.
Yeah, that would have, and he stuck with the one that was the most competent, I guess. Wait, we saw him crying because his stock was going down in front of Anyway, we're going to watch a video real quick from our good news this week that talks about how to deal with this stuff. And then we're going to come back. We're going to come back.
It was a really good video.
Of course it was, Sarah, because who came up with the story of the article anyway, we're going to come back in a minute and talk about how to apply those techniques to what we're just talking about now, because yeah, we'll be right back.
Welcome to your mindfulness practice. Find a comfortable seat, close your eyes, and take a deep breath. In and out.
Breaking news, President Trump announces the Golden Dome Missile Defense Project, a $175 billion initiative aiming to deploy space-based weapons to intercept missile threats from adversaries like China and Russia. Critics express concerns over the project's feasibility.
Let's gently return to our breath. Inhale, exhale.
Newsflash, during a White House meeting, President Trump confronts South African President Cyril Ramaphosa with unverified claims of white genocide against farmers, presenting controversial videos. Ramaphosa refutes the allegations, emphasizing that crime affects all communities in South Africa.
Let's anchor ourselves in the present moment.
Breaking, the House narrowly passes President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, a sweeping tax and spending package that includes extending tax cuts and eliminating climate initiatives. The bill faces criticism for potentially adding trillions to the national debt.
Feel your feet on the floor, wiggle your fingers, or scream into a pillow. Either is fine.
Just in, the U.S. accepts a luxury Boeing 747 jet from Qatar to serve as a temporary Air Force One. The decision raises bipartisan concerns over national security risks and the ethics of accepting such a gift.
Let your awareness settle, like sand in a glass of water.
Update. President Trump criticizes Bruce Springsteen on social media, calling him highly overrated after the musician labeled the administration corrupt and treasonous during a concert abroad.
Enough. It's time to put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Mindfulness isn't about ignoring the world. It's about choosing when and how to engage with it. If the president can fire experts rather than listen to their advice, perhaps we can afford to mute his chaos for a moment. Now, return to your breath. Exhale. Embrace the stillness you've created. And when you're ready to rejoin the chaos, with a little more humor and a lot more perspective, visit us at www.thecultofbrighterdays.org. We'll be there. Balance.
All right, I cut it off a bit early because it just made me depressed when I thought about it. Hi,
I think
everybody.
it's funny. When
We're back.
we go to break and you guys talk fascinating conversation, then we have to come back. Like,
And
I
then
wanna,
nobody
like,
says anything.
repeat that.
Nobody knows what we said.
I know.
We're brilliant on the breaks.
Well, we were
guys.
talking.
They really are.
We were talking about tips and everything like that. So, I mean, you know, and the funny thing about the tip, the no tax on tip and the no tax on overtime is that they run out right after the midterm elections.
Of course.
So they expire like at the end of 2027 or the beginning of 2027 or something like that.
So it's only for like a year?
Yeah,
And
it's
what does
only
that
for
do to, is it just income taxes or is it also payroll taxes?
It's just what it is it's like a credit back at the end of the year. So it's not like you don't have your stuff taxed and everything.
So they're going to continue to take withholding, but you'll just get a bigger
refund.
If you know how to file it right.
If you know how to file it right. Ugh.
Well, that's okay. I worked in restaurants, and waitresses back then knew how to file it right before they even filed it. They would go through and they would count up all their tips for the night, the cash tips, and then they would go through and they would figure out what the minimum percentage they had to claim was, and then they'd claim that minimum percentage, and then they just keep the rest.
I just made up numbers when I was declaring my tips as a pizza delivery driver.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they would sit there and they'd know, okay, I have to do 3.1% of it, so I have to claim this much in tips and everything on the paperwork. And I think one of the bad things about that nowadays is now they have those receipts where it shows how much they're paid off the debit card, so it prevents them from doing that type of thing.
Man.
So, not that it was fun to be a waitress or a server anyway, ever.
Yeah. The benefit that I had as a delivery driver is because I was in my car, I was subject to the regular minimum wage and not the server minimum wage. So it kind of didn't matter what I declared for tips.
Well, now you don't have to declare tips when you're a deliverer of pizza because it's all done online or done through the card when they, order it. Unless you pay for cash. I guess if you pay for cash or when they deliver it, but how many people do that anymore?
Who pays in cash anymore?
I don't even use cards anymore. Everything is through my phone and everything. Soon I'll be paying for everything through Bitcoin because that's the only way I'll get money from the government. Oh, wait, I don't get any money from the government, so it doesn't matter.
The other thing we were talking about during the break was finding a way to pay CEOs in tips rather than in bonuses or stock dividends and options, and because those things all get some kind of tax on them. If they get paid in tips, then they won't have to pay any taxes.
Well, there's a cap on it too. One of the guys who was a truck driver who was talking, I watched, said that the cap on it was so low compared to what truck drivers make that it sort of wiped it out. So, yeah, there's several MAGA people out there who are very upset by the way everything's phrased in that bill. But then again, the Senate said maybe they'll figure out enough changes that makes everybody happy that they'll have a vote on it around July 4th. So that's what the time frame of the Senate majority leader was saying, maybe around July 4th, they'll have modified it enough. And you remember Mike Johnson said, oh, they cannot make any changes. They need to push it through exactly like it is. That's what he said to the Senate.
Well, he said that because he finally found the secret combination of buttons to push to get a majority of his House to approve of it. He can't afford to lose he can afford to lose a single Republican, but he can't afford to lose 3.
How many people think that the secret button he found to push was they'll kill it in the Senate, so we'll be okay?
They'll blame the Senate and not us.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
I'm sure some of those would.
You know, in case the people listening haven't figured it out, you know, that you guys are talking about the one big beautiful bill with all of the like $1 trillion in deficit it's going to add.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just, I mean, you hadn't said that's what you're talking about, so I thought maybe I'd say something.
I think it was pretty apparent.
Yeah, I know. We did an article on that this week too, though.
But we're going to make a ton of money now because we're going to tariff Europe 50% on everything, which a lot of our pharmaceuticals come from India and Europe. So
I want to know why, like, everybody's talking about like, oh, we're gonna not have taxes on tips, and we're gonna have like these one things. Nobody's talking about like the fact that it completely destroys anything that we had for green energy. Like everything's gutted.
Yeah, all the benefits, all the tax benefits are gone.
Well, it's because we want to. It's because we want to be more like China. You know, where you have to walk outside in a mask because you can't breathe.
Oh, no, we don't want to wear masks.
We're anti-mask, remember?
No. See, I keep telling you people, we have to think of this from a good mindset, okay? Just like raw milk, just like no EPA, okay? If people walk out in the smog without a mask and there's no health care to help them with the black lung, that will probably result from it and everything.
They're going to have emphysema and asthma.
And people drink the raw milk to save themselves from the black lung and everything.
Survival of the fittest is just going to kick its own self in.
Well, this is
add a little
survival
bleach in there to make it better.
But this is survival of the fittest, of the people that actually pay attention to science and understand like consequences and stuff like this. Sure, some of them will be, you know, but the thing is, go ahead and drink raw milk. I think that's great. I think that we should give him the jet and he can fly around in it all he wants to. With Hegseth in our military, who cares what happens when they bug the jet and find out what the president says? Because he's just going to pick it up off of whatever telegraph.
Signal.
He says it, he'll say it out loud anyway. They don't.
Or Trump will sell it to him directly.
Yeah, exactly. And so
reach into a stash in the bathroom and say, "Here, I've got some documents you might be."
Well, no, he moved all those out of the bathroom, so he doesn't have to worry about them. But the point
sitting on the stage.
The point is, I know enough to wear a mask when I walk out into a city that has no breathable air and everything. I also know enough to have a good air filter on my HVAC and to sit inside most of the time too. You know, just like I have the logic sense of not drinking raw milk, you know. And I also have the sense to make sure that realize that what Robert F. Kennedy has already done to the people inspecting milk make me want to drink soda pop because it's probably healthier than milk, than real milk, than pasteurized milk. It's probably still healthier because there's nobody out there monitoring those things because they've laid off everybody who did all those safety checks.
You know,
but it's good news for me because I don't like to talk to people. So this means less people in the wrong.
You might be onto something with this whole they want us to be like China thing, because I'd always put it in this perspective of they want to be like Russia. Russia's like their best big brother, and that's who we're going to end up like. But I mean, if you think about like the practices, like the fact that we're going to have the parade and all of that stuff, like this is very, very
he wants to bring all the factories back from China. You know, the factories that we packed up and shipped over to China in the 70s and 80s.
Right. And then are now going to India.
Right. And the point is they want to bring them. He wants to bring them back. Right. He wants to bring them back so that, you know, we have those type of jobs over here. But the thing is, and like they said, he wants all the iPhones to be built over here, or they're going to put a 25% tariff on iPhones and Apple products. And the funny thing is if you put a 25% tariff on an iPhone, it's still significantly cheaper than building them here in this country. Unless you get rid of all the minimum wage and you get rid of all the benefits and you just have Americans work at sweatshop labor prices. So what do you want? You want those things to come back, or do you want a 25% tariff on a phone? Because it's going to cost like twice the price if we build them over here. 25% increase? Not too bad. And that's just 25% going
so not
into...
to bring us back to like what we were talking about, but the question then becomes, is this a Kakistocracy where we're like being literally torn apart from the inside by people who are complete morons and trying to ruin this country? Or are they trying to just completely obliterate the middle class and make us all into sweatshop workers?
Well, they already got rid of the middle class.
I mean, completely obliterate.
Oh,
that
completely.
Those of us here are now no longer, you know, able to maintain what we have.
So if they did, that would be dumb. Because the
both
reason
would be
why,
dumb, in my opinion.
Well, yes, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a. I was thinking about, is it Kakistocracy or is it Idiocracy?
Well,
And
there's
the
sort
difference is maybe not all that big of a difference, but
well, it's not. Idiocracy is Kakistocracy because they're still the worst to rule. That's where that phrase, the worst. Well, they're the worst because of qualifications. They're the worst because of ethics. They're worst because of, you know.
So Henry Ford was very right-wing and very racist and very classist, but even he figured out that if he actually paid his workers, that they could then be customers. That's what made America great in the first place, was sharing the wealth so that everybody could participate, and then that would generate more and more wealth.
It wasn't tariffs?
No, as a matter of fact, tariffs going away was another thing that pushed this growth, is that we could get the people who were best at creating each product to build that product wherever they were, and then import it to here if that wasn't us. And then they would benefit and we would benefit from a good product made efficiently.
In that talk at Hamilton College with Obama in April, one of the things he was saying was that no matter who you are, and I'm going to butcher this, but no matter who you are, what side of the fence you're on, we all believe in democracy, and we all believe in. I know he's way more like rainbows and unicorns than I am, and I mean.
You're the bishop of You're the bishop of rainbows and unicorns for our group, so yeah, that is way more.
See, here's the thing: is that has always been his problem, is that he was altogether too optimistic and unwilling or unable to see the reality that was in front of him. When it was time to start thinking about the Affordable Care Act, he said, "Oh, well, I want it to be bipartisan, so I'll get the Republicans on board by adopting their plan created by the conservative think tank Heritage Foundation, who goes around telling people, yeah, you want to make sure that you make housing as difficult for people experiencing homelessness as possible, even though you get worse outcomes from it." Those are the people that came up with Romneycare, which became Obamacare. And so he pre-capitulated and then expected the Republicans to say, oh, great. And it was still another 2 years before he finally figured out that Republicans were not negotiating in good faith.
I thought that was just the default de facto standard of them. They haven't negotiated in good faith since the 60s.
So you'd think that a professor of law would have noticed something like that earlier.
Well,
but
I have a question. I have a question for Sara, because Sara hasn't been leaping into this with her insight. Because I think her take on this whole thing with the catastrophe and the bestest people, maybe she thinks that they've managed to figure out a way to turn this whole administration around and bring in the best people with the office of faith and everything that's there. Because, you know, they're bringing in that sense of moral and ethical purpose into the government by
No, they're bringing in Christian nationalists. Okay, so I'm not allowed to mention my denomination, but my denomination requires for a person to be ordained a 4-year master's degree at minimum, preferred to have a doctorate as well. Right? So a lot of education and a lot of trial by a lot of people inspecting you along this way and then examining you. That's my denomination. We value educational process. We value that. We value making sure that you are an expert in your field. That's why when I look at that word catastocracy, hey, my denomination.
No, I'm just saying the word expert.
What they are putting, what they are putting into place are people that have none of that. They are parts of a system where they're like, I heard, you know, the voice of God call me. And then a week later, you're done. You're good. That is the same thing. We have people that do not have the right qualifications getting put. And that's the same thing that are going into that faith initiative. People that, in my opinion, do not have the right qualifications being put in charge. They are Christian nationalists. They are not Christian.
Well, but you're using that word like educated and things like that. And we know that the whole education scam and everything is just a grift, you know, when you're
so woke.
Yeah, education, it's so woke and it's a grift and everything.
Like, what is like the fact that we have corrupted that word and made like woke into a bad thing? Like, it's bad to be woke. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's bad to be awake and aware.
Robert
and
did
they tell people, wake up, people, quit being so woke.
Yeah, like, what? Do you not hear yourselves?
No, there is no self-awareness in this administration. And like I said, at the cult, we don't punch down. And I'm not going to say that people that follow the script and all this other stuff are bad or off or something wrong, because honestly, these guys at the top since the 60s have really been training people.
And they, with the whole skeptical hedonism, they really have this flowery idea that if you follow them, they will fix everything for you.
Well,
that is really, I want to believe that right now. I want everything fixed.
Well, and the problem with
I want the rainbows and the unicorns.
I do.
But that's the problem with
with
the Democrats coming into this next thing. They're going to say, we can fix everything that Trump screwed up. But the problem is, it's a fundamental problem with society itself that needs to be fixed. And neither of these sides is willing to do the things that need to fix it. And a couple of those things, because I've been thinking a lot about this, is we've been trained and we've been built to be we're built to be consumers, but we're also built to be commodities. And us as people, us as humans, by the system as a whole, because of the way our capitalism, and this is not saying capitalism is wrong and it doesn't work, okay, but how we've set it up since the 60s with commercialization and marketing and all that other stuff, we've been trained to walk into a store and realize we need to purchase a bunch more stuff to drive the economy, because that's how the economy's been driven since the 50s. Since Ford, when he decided that the best way to make money and keep our economy going is by showing people they have money to buy the stuff that we're selling. And we have this mindset, and it's ingrained into us.
So how are we going to fix it in the next 4 minutes?
A lot of raw milk.
I was going to say taxes. But
No.
better.
That's just if enough people drink raw milk, we'll have enough money for those that are still around.
The problem's going to solve itself.
Well, and that's the thing. We were talking about the cult here and what we do and how we're open to everybody. Like I said, we don't punch down, we punch up, because let's just be honest, it's hard not to punch at the administration. It's like driving a plate. It's like two people taking a plate glass window across the road. If RFK is talking about something, I'm going to have to drive through it because it's a plate glass window on a road. It's just, you can't not do it. You cannot make a joke about him not knowing what riboflavin is and ingredients and everything like that. But, and I completely lost my train. Oh, the cult.
But we can encourage people not to carry the plate glass window across the road, right? We can.
I don't know. It's pretty goddamn funny.
Well, no, I mean, we can stand up for others. We can be there in supporting our neighbors. We can not buy stuff from companies that support this administration.
We cannot buy stuff we don't need.
Protests. We can not buy stuff we don't need. We can stop participating in the Kakistocracy or idiocracy.
Well, I'm not participating in the first place because I know enough to wear a mask when I go outside in a city that has no EPA controls and the air looks like it's gray, hazy, even at eye level. And I know enough not to drink raw milk. And I know enough to not drink pasteurized milk right now because they're not inspecting it. So educate yourself, people, on what not to do. I mean, it's at that point where if you educate yourself on what not to do, it's actually just as good as educating yourself on what to do in terms of survivability. Sara, last comments on the spirituality of our great mass of people that live in a large area that are under the same rules. Because they are great, those people. Nothing else, just the people themselves.
I still believe that people in general are good people. And that when we're talking to our neighbors, when we're outside in this real world talking to our neighbors, you're going to have people that care about you and love you. And then, what in the mindfulness video, like we made sure, right? We said mindfulness is not about choosing to turn and ignore everything. You're still aware of the dumpster fire that is going on right now. But you have to be very conscious of what you are choosing to consume, not just in the store, but what you are choosing to consume from the media as well.
The less I talk to certain people, the more I care about and love them.
Yeah, see, there's that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That's good.
I'm not sure I need to go and talk to some of these people for me to care about and love them, because that might, significantly go down a notch if I do talk to them.
Yeah, but I will say, having had to take ancient Greek and actually study it, that whole catastocracy, that first word, right? That's where we get the English word catastrophe. Right?
I thought it was where we got the English word caca.
I thought that's where we got
No, that's a Spanish word. Caca is a Spanish word. So.
Robert makes a point to us that also don't eat lettuce or spinach right now because that's dangerous as well to do. Which is depressing. Which is depressing because I'm like wanting to eat more salads to be healthy. But anyway, I'll just go back to my diet soda. I'll just go back to my diet soda because it's the safest bet. Richard, as our resident political reactionary.
So, given that people are basically good, I'm taking that as a given because I trust Bishop Sara. Given that, then when they support all this, gestures broadly, it must be because they have failed to understand something. And so I'm going to make it my mission to make sure I am not ambiguous when I tell them that they're wrong.
Go for it.
Sounds like you're using that education thing again there.
The Republic is a good thing. We want to have the Constitution, but you need to actually read it.
Well, a lot of people read it.
5th Amendment, 14th Amendment, let's due process.
I've watched several of these people sit in the Senate and read the Constitution, and they know how to read the Constitution. I mean, they won't say what the Constitution says.
They don't know what it means.
Well, I'm sure they know.
Yeah,
they just
they
don't
read the Constitution and they see riboflavin and they don't know what that means. So.
Well, no, I think they know what it means. They just don't want to say it to be legally on the hook. But yeah, that's a good point, Robert. So Dr. Jess, being our mental health expert on the committee, council committee, we need to really figure out a name for this group. Plus, we're also hiring, so look out for positions because what do they say? As a cult, our main purpose is to get free labor.
Exploit
we're
labor,
not
yes.
hiring.
Yeah.
We're looking for interns.
We're looking to exploit labor.
Exploit labor, yes.
Which we're not supposed to say out.
I learned that from the cult lady. She taught me.
I know, and we're not supposed to say those words out loud, so congratulations. Yet again, I failed. But anyway, Dr. Jess, from a mental health perspective, mindfulness and everything, how do we approach this catastrophe of leadership?
I think the other two are very right, that we have to believe in the best in people and we need to know what we're saying and not let ourselves be swayed by what they're saying. As long as we stay strong and we continue to stand up for other people and we continue to show up and continue to do our best, that's all we can do. And sometimes that means turning it off and not watching the news for the night, because you can always catch up tomorrow. It's not going to go away.
I have found, from my point of view, that the news this week and the news last week have so been redundant, and it's just like a different flavor of corruption that I don't need to pay attention anymore. I can just assume that 5 or 6 or 10 corruption things happened this week that have never been done before. Because it's so bigly. It just keeps ramping up until somebody can text me when the missiles fly or when I'm not going to get paid anymore, I guess. But anyway.
Keep an eye on the southern sky to see if Effie Warren is sending anything up.
Yeah. Watch for those Tesla rockets or something. Anyway.
They're really pretty.
Yeah, I'm sure they're pretty. Now that FEMA won't cover people that get hit by those things falling down, because that's one of the new things is space debris is not really like dealt with by FEMA, so that makes it a lot cheaper and a lot less concern about getting those pretty things across the night sky. But that being said, my name is Michael Anderson Henderson Dorland. It is 3 o'clock. We've talked enough about this topic. I want everybody out there to remember, follow our tenets of 1, be kind. If you can't be kind, at least be nice. If you can't be nice, at least be funny, but don't punch down, because honestly, those people have had enough crap as it is. And if you can't be funny, then just shut up. And if you can't shut up, go away. This is how people can know that we're not discriminating against anybody from joining our group, because it's self-correcting. If you want to join our group but you can't shut up, that's your choice. That's not on us.
We have people in the group that talk.
Yeah. You're muted, Sarah, for some reason. I can't hear you.
Oh.
We'll just pretend we know what you're saying. Anyway, all right, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next Saturday at 2 with another topic of happiness and joy, because as we always say, it's
happy,
good.
happy, joy,
It's the good word, just like it's the good news, even when it's not. So have a great day.